staircase never would have been here in the 18th century. This is a product of the fact that this building was reconstructed back in the 50s and intended to be used as a little house. Ryan is Durfee, he owned a big house next door, where he, his wife, his 11 children, and his slave servants all live. There are places where people might work where they live or live where they work. This is just not relevant. Yep, of course.
Is it Tailor, right?
Yes, there are 15 Tailor shops here in this city, just before the Revolutionary War. Everyone needs clothes. Can't have any. So there are such things in this time period. Probably the best example of this sort of breakdown of a budget comes from a document that was published in 1780, right at the end of the Revolutionary War, called the London Economist. And it breaks down a household expense budget for a 4-person household, 2 children, 2 parents, and 2 live-in servants. And it says that you should expect to spend somewhere around 12 to 15% of your annual income on clothing. I have a very, very strong suspicion that those numbers are inflated in order to jumpstart a flagging economy at the end of the Revolutionary War. Many documents about how you should spend your money, a lot of it is skewed not only by the preference of the person that's writing it, but also by what their motivations are. And so I think those numbers are inflated. People in this time period can spend just as much on their clothing as you do, can have just as much clothing as you do, or less. Some people have a little bit of clothing in this time, some people have a lot of clothing in this time, and just like today in the 21st century, your bank account has the last and the least to do with how much money you actually end up spending. Different factors that go into it. The same exigent ones that influence our wardrobes today in the 21st century. What do you do for a living? Where in the world do you live? How many children do you have within your household? How sociable and active are you? What sports and hobbies do you participate in? Even things like age can have a huge impact on how much clothing we tend to have, but in the end it's all choice. And in truth, this is the one aspect of history we've stolen from our ancestors in the way that we tend to talk about it and look at it, and it makes them human just like us, and it's just as important to them as it is to us today. There's not a spot on a globe you could put your finger from which we're not importing fabric in this time period. It all gets funneled through Britain and brought here on British ships, as well as Britain, the textile industry being a third of Britain's entire economy. And so not only is it British textiles, but goods brought through Britain. In addition to being the first industrialized nation on the face of the earth, Britain is also a global superpower, the largest trading bloc on the face of the planet. And so as a colony of Britain prior to the Revolution, we got all the best stuff at the best price. I think this is exemplified perfectly by the fact that as soon as the War for Independence ends, we go right back to buying from the same people we've always bought from. Who else are you going to buy from? Yeah. Britain will remain the largest trading partner of the U.S. up to and just after World War II. And so it's a very old relationship we have with the old mother country, and a lot of it's built on. Throughout all of human history, the most common kind of sewing we can find records for at home is mending and repair work clothing. It's why it's a common life skill taught to boys and girls while they're still young, at the knees of their mothers and fathers, as a life skill, so that you can actually do those sorts of things at home in a world where everything is made by somebody's hands. I think there's another aspect to it as well, though. Increasingly, especially in the English-speaking world, it's also to prepare that child to go out into a world full of industries that use needle and thread when they make together, so you can find work and employment. But always remember, in a world where that's just how things are made, and it's a very common life skill, it's not considered a very high level of skill. Hand stitching is done by perhaps millions of people every year in factory settings in places like London, mass producing things like underwear and shoes and bed sheets and towels and napkins and tablecloths and children's clothing, paid pennies a day as human sewing machines and imported in sizes for you to buy from the store, or in sets for you to buy from the store. Repurposing clothing is very common in a world where everything is made by